Hello and welcome to the Video Creator Show, where we talk the juicy details of how to succeed on YouTube. And what better way to do that than to talk directly to someone who has done it. Nick Lewis knows his stuff when it comes to interior design and home decor. In fact, his YouTube channel on those very topics currently sits at over 370,000 subscribers and over 34 million total channel views. He's got great taste and knows what's important when it comes to living in a place that feels like home. That's why he has massively popular videos like interior design trends that need to go, best upcoming interior design trends, and the best and worst products at IKEA. Today, I'll ask Nick about how he built his thriving interior design channel and turned it into a lucrative business. But first, the Video Creator Show is brought to you by VidChops.com, an editing service that helps take the burden of editing off your back. Check out VidChops.com to see how you can save yourself tons of time and energy while taking your YouTube channel to the next level. So the first question I have for you, Nick, is your channel is only about 2 years old, and you have all these subscribers, all these views. Your first video has over 400,000 views. So why do you think it was so successful right off the bat? It feels like you kind of had a lightning rise. Like your first video took off. Is that what happened? Like, tell us about the come up.
Yeah, so that's misleading. It's not, the first video trickled in for a while. It was when the channel eventually did take off, people watched all my old content, and that's how that video got to 400,000 views. You know, basically, I remember uploading that first video, as I think all YouTubers do when they upload their first one, because there's like a small part of you that is both excited and scared that, like, what if this goes viral? What if I'm huge? What if this is amazing? And then I uploaded it and I had like 0 views by the next day. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is not a viral moment. Fair enough. So I started... Yeah, that video, honestly, you know, it did like anything else. I posted it on Facebook because although I don't ever post on Facebook, that's where like my mom and aunt are. So I was like, please watch my video and give me 7 views. That was essentially the start. And then it kind of views trickled in for a good like week or two, honestly, from friends and family. I took like 3 days to tell my friends that I was like, hey, I posted a YouTube video, and I think my text was like, I'm not emotionally ready to hear any constructive criticism of how I did, because, you know, it's you're vulnerable putting yourself on camera. It's not a comfortable thing to talk to a camera lens and put it out on the internet for all to see. So I was very shy about it for a good kind of few days, but I just kind of went out there and threw it out. And that was honestly how it was for the first week or two. And then I got some people that were like, hey, I really love this video. Like they found me through search or whatever. So it was a really slow burn. I mean, I don't have the analytics in front of me on that particular video, but you know, it was just 100 views, 200 views, 500 views. And then I just was consistent and posted the next video and tried to post the best video that I could with the skills that I had at the time, which was limited. And then as time went on, I think I was monetized after 4 months. So it wasn't like 400,000 views in a week and I was monetized. Like it was 4 months to get monetized, which for the record is, I think, actually it's pretty fast actually. Good, yeah. And so that is fast. And we can talk about like my strategy and how I got there. But in terms of that particular video, it was probably like 6 months later that I looked back and I saw like, wow, that video has like 400,000 views or whatever it was at the time. But it was not like, it was under 10,000 for like 6 months. It was only until people found me, watched my back catalog, and then found that video, and that seemed to get recommended. Or maybe people just wanted to they were curious about where I started and they wanted to see my original video, and that's why that particular one took off. Or it was a good topic, I don't know, but it's deceiving. 400,000 is deceiving. It was not a lightning fast situation, that's for sure. Well, it didn't feel like it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear people's story about that, because sometimes it is a lightning rise. This makes more sense. It seems more like YouTube gold standard for building a channel, having that sort of consistent posting schedule, or even just posting consistently, and then all of a sudden, not even all of a sudden, that kind of gradual just incline, and you have this back catalog, and people are just watching through it. And that's always the best way to succeed, I find, is just post consistently, and people will find you eventually. And if you have a massive back catalog, then you're going to get binge watchers, and then that's going to up your watch time hugely, and you kind of get this snowball effect.
Totally. It's like, if I've heard other YouTubers say when they launch a second channel, one, I think probably pretty good strategy is to bank like 5 videos and just post them basically back to back. So when that first video goes out, it's really 5 videos. And so you give people a chance to binge 5 videos. And that, at least in my experience, is huge for the algorithm to pump out your content. I had a video, which went viral in January. So I started in June 2020, and in January I had a video that got 500,000 views in a week, which at the time, well, even now, 500,000 views in a week is amazing. But it was just crazy. And that video shot me past 100,000 subscribers in literally like a month. It was crazy. And that particular video, really, I think what happened is people saw that video, liked me, and thought, what else has this guy got? And then went back and binged. And I noticed the comments coming in that were saying like, I just watched all your videos and I can't wait for more. And I just binged all your content. And I think that is kind of the moment where YouTube starts to go, okay, this video is something special. And that's where they start pumping out to more people, which leads to more binging. And then it just that's the virality moment, I think. So you kind of need that bank of content. As hard as it is to explain to like a new YouTuber who's like, well, I just made 2 videos and I didn't go viral yet. So like, what's happening here? You need that back catalog, as painful as it can be, because it feels like it's going nowhere for so long. But you kind of need that to be able to give people something to watch and enough content to make it feel like people can binge and kind of get that cycle going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about the cycle, and it embeds people in it embeds you in the algorithm. Sorry, it's a little early right now, but that is really crucial. I think it also helps people remember you. If somebody watches one video of yours and that's all there is, or maybe there's 2, I think they're less likely to remember that they even watched you like 3 days from now. Whereas if they're kind of able to binge and the algorithm has like a huge backlog to start promoting to you, then you're more likely to kind of just show up in people's lives more often. And so that's great. I think that you did everything right there. So congrats on that.
Thanks. One thing I'll add too is like a tip that I got from somebody. So a shout out to, I think, is it Tim Schmoyer, I think, who does, is it Tim or Tom? Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. But from Video Creators, I think if YouTubers might know who Video Creators channel is. He actually, one time I watched one of his videos and it just really spoke to me. He was like, basically you only want to give people one call to action, which I agree with, because I read the book, like, Don't Make Me Think, right? It's like basically give people one call to action of like what you want them to do next. And he's like, stop asking people to subscribe. Stop asking for necessarily the like. And again, this is controversial. This is just an opinion. No one really knows. But what he said is the number one call to action you should give them is watch another video. And so what I started to do is in my end screen in the last few minutes of my video, and I still do this to this day, is like, here's a related video I think you're going to like, and I point basically to the next video. And it feels really obvious, but I never ask people to like or subscribe because they'll do that on their own. I just get them to watch another video. And I started to do that consistently throughout that. And I think that was another thing that helped people kind of go down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, especially liking and subscribing. Obviously, that increases engagement and could potentially get you more subscribers. But ultimately, watch time is king. So if you can get people to click on another video and double the watch time, if they watch a 15-minute video and then you get them to watch another 15-minute video, I mean, that's twice as good. So
it's like the watch session. It's the linking. I think that's key. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's cumulative. I believe even if you watch 2 videos in a row, this is how it used to be. YouTube's kind of always changing, but I heard that if you watch 2 videos in a row, the watch time sort of applies to the first video, and then that video is more likely to go viral. I mean, it's going to help both of them, but
because because the test of sort of success from the first video is that it got them to watch the second one. So it's that session, right? So and that was for me, that viral video, I think it encouraged people to watch another video. And so that video became went viral because it was a proven win for YouTube to send that video out to everybody, because they would watch another video, which means more ads and more watch time and more like increasing the time that people watch in that session, I think is really key.
Absolutely. 100%. So one thing I like to talk to people about is getting into YouTube, your kind of life before YouTube. What prepared you to do this? And why did you do it? You mentioned in, I believe it was your first video, that you had a company that you used to own. I presume you sold it. How did you get experienced in interior design? Was it more of a hobby? Did it have something to do with that company? And then how did you ultimately gain the confidence and desire to make this channel?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I didn't go to interior design school, which is something that it's very flattering when people think that I did. But no, I went to business school. And so I actually worked in HR for like 8 years or so, maybe something like that. And then, as you do, I opened a juice company. And it was during kind of the wave of like the cold pressed juice wave. And these shops were just opening up all over. And I opened up sort of a kind of little mini chain. I had a few stores, a production space. I had like, distribution, some grocery stores and stuff. So that was it was quite successful, and I was really happy doing that. And but I realized I fell in love with the creation of the stores rather than necessarily operating, which is usually a red flag. Like, I didn't love dealing with the day-to-day operations. I loved business. I loved owning my own business, but I really loved designing every store to feel a little bit unique. And I hired originally an interior designer, and I worked with her, and I still know her to this day. She's great. She's actually also a YouTuber, by the way. But anyway, and so I fell in love with the interior design process and the construction process, because it takes months to build these stores, and I built a few in that time. So that's why I really fell in love with it. And I started to learn a lot from contractors and designers and stuff that I was working with, and started really spending a lot of time looking at this as opposed to probably operating the business that I already had. So eventually I sold that company to another juice company, and I worked for them for a bit, and ultimately was kind of like, okay, well, it's really hard to sell a company and then work for the people that bought your company. So eventually I decided that it was time to move on, and I didn't really know what to do next, honestly. And it was a real struggle to figure out, like, okay, I built this company, I sold it. Now what am I going to do next? And so eventually I knew I kind of wanted to kind of get back in the interior design space. So I did my own renovation, and that was really interesting, but I had tons of problems. And one of the things I found was a lot of the buying process for things like lighting and bathroom fixtures and kitchen fixtures is more challenging than it probably should be, because you go to a showroom and it's incredibly expensive because there's just multiple layers of sales reps and distributors and all the rest. So I did a kind of a direct-to-consumer brand, and it was a bit of a test. And I launched that in January, and I started to kind of work with different, influencers and things, but I realized it was freaking expensive to work with some of these influencers, because I had so much success with that, with influencer marketing back when I was doing the juice bar. So, I was thinking about, how do I get myself known? I was doing Instagram ads. I was doing, Facebook ads. I was testing a bunch of different ways to get customers. But eventually I kind of settled on this idea of, like, it was kind of an aha moment where I was, instead of paying influencers or paying people to talk about my product or getting it in front of people, what if I became an authority in this subject, put myself out there, and then I could say, hey, look, I also have this brand, Augie Nickel, that you could maybe check out. And that was kind of the original idea. I also knew with the juice bar, I constantly put the company first, and I never put myself. I was always the guy in the background. I never was public really about owning this company. I always put the business first. And I realized when I sold that business that no one actually cared about Nick Lewis at all. And once I sold the business, no one cared. So with this Augie Nickel, I was like, no, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to put my face out there. I'm going to be known as kind of an authority in this subject. And that was where the YouTube channel came from. Originally, I thought it was going to be quite simple. Turns out YouTube isn't. And honestly, the channel I really got into it, and I fell in love with it and video creation. And 4 months later, I was monetized. I was like, oh my God, I can make money on this. And then I still had Augie Nickel, but it sort of became less and less of my attention. So I always like to say, like, YouTube was a marketing channel for me, a way to acquire customers for this startup I was working on. And it sort of became a business in and of itself. And it sort of became a bit of I like to think of it as like a small media company. So now, so as I said, I was monetized. That video I mentioned earlier, that went viral in January. So 7 months after I started the channel. Then I had over 100,000 subscribers, and then I started taking brand deals in April, and I mean, that was it. So I still have, like, I still figuring out what to do with All the Nickel, but honestly, I don't have time to really work on it. It was like a test that I guess was successful because I did manage to get customers from it, from the YouTube channel. But now I'm just so busy with all this other stuff that, yeah, I mostly, like, basically I say I'm 100% on YouTube now.
So do you have any time that you spend on that these days? You said 100% YouTube. Do you have like one guy who's like, I'm your guy?
No, it's
gonna
me.
hire you.
It's me. Like, people send me messages like, "Hey, I just have a question about this," and they're like surprised because I'm like, "Hey, how's it going? Yeah, let me ask you that," because it's really super small. I never really launched anything past that initial collection of just like a few accessories, and they're like, "Oh, I really love your channel, but I thought I'd be talking to a customer service person." I'm like, "Nope, this is it. This is me," because I've just never invested in that business. It's basically just been sort of doing its thing for a couple of years now, and I just need to figure out what to do with it next. It's not where my love and passion is. So you could say it's a 0.5% I spend of my time I spend on that, and 99.5 on social media.
Okay, sure. And I mean, clearly your social media presence is going very well. I did want to talk to you about kind of how you're monetizing. You mentioned YouTube ads, of course, brand deals, of course. I also noticed you have some Amazon links. Like, I presume that you get a percentage of anything that people buy from those. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, how you manage to get brand deals, and how, if you're comfortable, kind of how much you make, or be as transparent or as vague as possible.
Yeah.
I just let's hear about the money.
Yeah, let's hear about the money. Exactly. Yeah, no, it's just fun because I never get to talk about this on my channel, because if ever I talk about stuff that's not interior design related, people just don't watch. So it's nice that you have an audience that actually cares. No, basically, yeah. So YouTube AdSense is, and YouTube AdSense and brand deals are the main two ways that I make money. Affiliate links, and I'll dive into the numbers in a sec, but the affiliate links, is relatively small, but it's basically divided up into Amazon and then everything else. So I'm a member of what's called LTK, like to know it. You can link to Crate and Barrel, CB2, West Elm, a lot of brands that I talk about on my channel. I have some, and Wayfair, which is another really great one that converts quite well for me. So I do that. And then I'm launching other things, because one priority of mine for next year is to diversify my income stream. I'm very view dependent, even though brand deals aren't view dependent, or at least you kind of think they're not, because they offset some of the risk. Like, if this video bombs, then at least I have, some money coming in from a brand deal, which is true. But eventually, you bomb too many times and the brand deals stop happening. So I'm still very much kind of feel like I'm on that treadmill where I've got to keep views up and people really engaged. So I would love to focus on some paid products. So I'm launching some style guides pretty soon, which is basically different interior design styles, and I have different renderings and what to do, what not to do, some links, some examples, all that sort of stuff that I'm going to be selling through my website, which I'm very excited about. Probably going to be starting a Patreon, still debating it, to answer sort of individual questions that people might have. So I'm looking at other ways. I'd love to launch a collection with another brand. So have like a Nick Lewis collection, like a small group of products that are sold through a different retailer. That would be super cool. So definitely working on other ways to monetize, but my big three are probably like 50% AdSense, let's say 40% brand deals, and 10% affiliate links. Maybe that's right. In terms of numbers, where should I start? I would say that AdSense can vary. My CPM, I think, is quite high. So I don't know, you might know more about people's CPMs than I do, but my CPM at this time of the year probably is around $30.
30?
Yeah, like maybe in the high 20s to 30.
That's fantastic.
To US, yeah, because I'm Canadian, right? So I have to quick do some math in here because my analytics are all in Canadian dollars. But yeah, it's probably around there, and that's kind of the thing. A lot of YouTubers say like, well, AdSense, doesn't really pay very well and whatever, and that might be true if you are getting like a couple of dollars CPM, because maybe for a gaming channel or a channel that has a really wide audience, you might get millions of views, but you might get like that the audience just isn't as desirable to advertisers because they could be like, I don't know, 13 or something, right? And not as maybe desirable as my target, which is like a 35-year-old woman who probably lives in the United States and like 50% chance she's in the US. And probably, yeah, like a woman in her 30s is probably kind of my classic customers. And, a lot of brands want to get in front of that audience, right? So I think that really pumps up my CPM. So a lot of YouTubers say, it doesn't pay very much. Sometimes I wonder if that's sort of saying it doesn't pay very much because then it justifies their brand deals or in a way, or maybe that's encouraging people to move them to Patreon. I'm not saying they're trying to like, I don't know, try to make anybody feel sorry for them. But I wonder if that's part of the framing. I don't really know. Which is probably more likely true, people's CPMs are just not anywhere close to what mine is. And that's just the reality of AdSense really, truly doesn't actually pay all that much. But for me, AdSense is a really, really big part of my, it's a really big income stream for me. It's probably, I don't know if half my, I haven't broken it down into percentages, but for me in terms of probably, it can be 20,000 I have to do US, sorry. Probably could be like 16 to maybe even 25,000 a month.
Dang.
In AdSense. Wow. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So like my AdSense on Treesicle, which is a gaming channel, is usually between 7 and maybe 15 on a great day.
Right.
And there are some other factors in here. As you said, your target audience is somebody who they have some money, they're in their 30s, and also you're kind of covering brands and in a niche where I feel like there's a lot of products that are they're a bit more expensive, or people are willing to kind of splurge, and advertisers know that. And you're in a space, I think, where it makes sense that ads pay very well. So with me in a gaming space, I think gamers are maybe more, I don't want to say they're more frugal, but they're probably buying more like software or video games, and the ads don't pay badly. Another part of this too is, as far as I can tell, you don't swear in your videos. Like, you're
Never.
Totally family friendly. That helps a lot. So with Treesicle, like our early videos, there was a lot of swearing. There's a lot of kind of edgy jokes. That was what we did. And then the adpocalypse happened, and I feel like our CPM tanked.
Right.
It definitely did. That's how it goes.
Totally. I think you could totally see, I mean, it's funny because of course we don't really see the ads that are run on our channels, but that's actually a really good question I've never really thought about. But you could totally see everything from Dyson to Lululemon to not just like a Crate and Barrel obviously would want to advertise, but yeah, like, I mean, Aritzia, I mean, think of what targets a woman who's a homeowner who's in her maybe 30s or 40s. I mean, there's a lot, she buys a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of brands that probably would really want to get in front of her. And I think it's also the supply side too. I don't know how many gaming channels there are, but I would wager there's a lot more gaming channels than there are interior design channels. So that is kind of a factor as well, is that it's a pretty, on the supply side, there's probably a lot more choice kind of spread out, you know what I mean? For those video games to be able to target many different types of channels, which is going to drive down the CPM for everybody. But for me, it might just be a pricier niche to be in. But yeah, I try my best to be, I swear all the time off camera, but no, on camera, I keep it very family friendly.
That's smart.
Yeah. And then affiliate links. I think people think affiliate links are going to be bigger for me than they probably are. I think people think like that. I bet you people think that might be like my biggest source of revenue would be affiliate links, because I talk about products all the time. I think nobody, first of all, with affiliate links, I find in my experience, nobody converts like Amazon, right? So like there is, you wonder why people always recommend Amazon. It's just because you get this percentage of, the whole sale, whether, kind of no matter what they buy. And it just converts like kind of nothing else. You know what I mean? Because everybody just buys on Amazon. And so, if I recommend a couch from Crate and Barrel and say, this is a really beautiful couch, you should check it out. I might sell like a few of those couches, but I'm not selling 1,000 of them. It's not easy to sell a couch to somebody, right? And the commissions generally can be higher on selling a couch, which is great. But it doesn't actually, I feel like it doesn't amount to the same amount as kind of you get on Amazon. So I'm prioritizing Amazon in a way because of that conversion, which Amazon is just very good. And they're very good, I think, when you start getting, I'm not there yet, but when you start getting a lot in affiliate links, I think they can find ways to partner with you in other ways, like, I don't know, I think they give you gift cards or whatever to be like, now you can buy more stuff on Amazon and talk about it on your channel, right? So I think they're really good at sort of, they know what they're doing, basically. But I think I probably make a couple of grand. No, probably a little bit more than that if I add all my different sort of affiliate stuff together. It probably equals a good, like, few $1,000s a month.
That's still great. Wow.
Still great. Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, like, there's some people that are like, I've heard, I'm not mentioning any names, but what they've told me how much they make on Amazon. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, that's crazy. Or not just even Amazon, but like all these different other affiliate link programs that people can get involved in. I've never really, the recurring revenue software thing is interesting. Like, I mean, how many, I don't know do you know what TubeBuddy is? I don't know if you've heard
I do, yeah. I have it downloaded, actually. Yeah,
like TubeBuddy and vidIQ. I think there's some of these like YouTube growth people that are making serious affiliate, like recurring revenue on these TubeBuddy memberships that would honestly, like, you could pay your mortgage with residuals from TubeBuddy signups. Like, it sometimes is kind of crazy, but I never really, I don't know if I've always like cracked the code on affiliate links, but getting there. And then brand deals. I mean, obviously, I mean, people say this all the time and it's true. You can't really always like say exactly how much you make on every deal. So I can't say like, oh, Wayfair or Dyson or whatever, which are brands that I've worked with that are lovely. I can't say like, this is how much they paid me, obviously, because I'm under contract for that. What I think is a good metric that people don't realize is now that you kind of sort of know my CPM, so you know that I'm getting like $30, let's say, for every 1,000 views, I sort of break that down into how much an advertiser pays to be on my channel, which is, again, you can get that number pretty easily. And then you got to think like, from there, how much is it going to be for me to film and edit a video for the brand? How much is my endorsement worth? So it's not just saying, hey, here's an ad for whatever, Aritzia before my video. It's now saying, okay, Nick Lewis is endorsing this and saying he uses it and he likes it and he's demoing it in the product and in the video, sorry. And it's actually physically in the video, right? So that people actually get to see it and it's burned into the video forever. So you have to put a premium on that. So brand deals can definitely get up there. And honestly, like, it's a bit of more of a moving target because it depends on how many brand deals I do. Like, sometimes I'll go a month and I won't do a brand deal. I'll maybe do one. Sometimes I'll do 6 videos a month and 4 of them are sponsored. That kind of depends. So that's a little bit more ebbs and flows depending on kind of deal flow. And maybe I'll get a bunch of brands come to me and I don't want to work with them. Maybe sometimes I have a bunch of brands, like Christmas time is coming, which means for the next 3 months, a lot of brands want to do sponsorships, especially because I am so product focused and very, attractive to that particular demographic. So, not particular demographic, but like a demographic that does a lot of shopping during this time of year, right? So heading into the Christmas season, I think is usually, brands pay a premium for that, and I probably will work with more brands. So that tends to ebb and flow, sort of depending on the season.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, the last quarter of the year is always the biggest for YouTube and probably for shopping in general. But yeah, CPM goes up, brand deals go crazy, they're paying you more money, there's more people who are trying to give you money. It's just, I mean, it's kind of insane. Like December, November, kind of October, it's like the best and worst part of the year, I would say. It can be a little stressful managing everything and trying to collect all the acorns, so to speak. But also, once January comes, you're like, ooh.
I know. I'm actually trying to be smart this year, and I'm trying to line up I've lined up I think 2 brand deals for January, just so like, I've even locked in my January brand deals in some ways before my December ones because I'm waiting to sort of see what's going to happen there. But just to know that I have those ones coming in January because I just know it's such a dry spell. Well, for me, my views are usually really good in January because everybody's like, what's new? Like new trends coming in the new year. People love that at that time of year. But CPM is So I think my CPM probably goes down to 15, 16 bucks American probably in January. And then it slowly rises throughout the year to get to where I am now, which is like 30. And then it'll probably go up, as we get closer to Christmas.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. So do you hire an editor? Like, this is kind of a big question. Like, it saves a lot of time, sometimes even money. What's your deal with editing?
Yeah. So when I first started, I downloaded Final Cut Pro. I took a Skillshare course from Ali Abdal, who I give full credit. I don't know if you know him. He's a YouTuber and he has a great Skillshare course. And that's not an endorsement. Well, it's kind of an endorsement because I really enjoyed it. And actually, if you look at my first video on YouTube, it's essentially like a course project from that Skillshare course. Like I copied his fonts. I copied his his transitions, like all those different things, because that's what you do when you don't know what you're doing, right? So you just kind of, and then slowly I developed my own style. But that was, that's what I did from June 2020. And then I think it was probably early in the year, about March, April, about the same time as I got my manager, which we can get to in a sec if you want to talk about that. But my first editor, and he was great. I had a few editors. January to like March was a weird period for me because that video blew up in January, and then a lot of brands and a lot of managers and agents and whatever, they all reached out to me very, very quickly. It was kind of overwhelming. But the editor, he came to me and he's like, "Hey, I edit for another YouTube channel." And I was thinking about getting an editor because, again, I was, for the first kind of 8 months, I was doing it all myself. And I was thinking about like maybe it was time. And I had some people reach out to me, but it just never like felt right. And he said, "I edit for this YouTuber. His name is The Modest Man, who has a YouTube channel. It's like a men's style channel." And I knew the channel. So that was like a huge, huge help, right? Like I actually knew the quality of the work, and I knew and trusted the YouTuber that he was already working with, or he had worked with in the past. So that was huge for me. So that was my editor that I said, "Yep, sounds good. Here's the footage. Let me know what you can do with it." And we worked together on that first video. I think it must have been around, February, March, April of 2021. So about 10 months after starting, 8 to 10 months. And it was really good. It was like so much better than I could do. And we have worked together ever since. So the only thing for him is that he was taking like 4 or 5 days to edit a video, which was totally fine. But then, because I was doing one a week, so I was still doing some of the videos and he was doing some. He was probably doing like 2/3. And then over time, I think it must have been like September, October, which again was my high season. And I like had all these, like had brand deals lined up. I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." He was like, "Oh, hey, just so you know, I'm going on vacation for like 3 weeks." And I was like, "Okay, totally fine. You're allowed to go on vacation. I get that." But like, okay, now my little engine has been sort of disrupted. So I was back to editing those videos. So I talked to a friend who was thinking about doing YouTube, or was doing knew somebody who was an editor, and said he's amazing. And so that was when I got my second editor. And I've worked with him ever since. And he was great. He is great. And what I basically told him was just, "Here's my editing style for my other video. Like, here it is. Please go and copy it." Because I don't want people to feel, I never want it to feel like you can tell who edited it between the two. I mean, I can tell, but I don't want my audience to tell of who's actually editing it. So now I have two, which frees me up to be able to, they're both freelance basis. I pay them by the video. And I just basically kind of, send them the footage. I can do 2 a week if I want to. That's a little bit tight. But so that way I kind of have some flexibility with 2 editors. Because if you only got the one, if they're sick or they go on vacation or they quit one day, I mean, it's back to you. Right. So having 2 gives you some flexibility and sort of kind of mitigates that risk.
Mm-hmm. And did you see an influx of views? Like, did you end up releasing more often with hiring an editor or 2 editors? Or was it just kind of like, this is less work, this is easier, I can kind of look at things with a bird's eye view? How did that go for you?
The biggest thing is that it was flexibility. So I can release more videos than I could. Like before it was, if I was, typically I think if I uploaded on a Saturday and I was doing my own editing, it was like Monday would roll around and I'd be like, what do I want to talk about? And then I would figure out exactly what I want to say, understand the different bullets. I don't script, I like outline. So then I would gather all my B-roll, all my photos, whatever. I was really disorganized back then. Now I'm much more organized with my flow of where I get my images and how I communicate that to my editor. But at the time, it was like I was downloading all these images and whatever, and that was Tuesday, and then probably like Wednesday I was filming, and then Thursday I was editing, and Friday I was still kind of editing, and then Saturday I was uploading. And I think that's kind of a fairly typical schedule for a lot of YouTubers that still do their own editing. And that, to me, is kind of a recipe for burnout, because there's not any flexibility to be like, I'm going to go on vacation for a week, because you can't bank content really when you're on that treadmill. So this gave me the opportunity to bank content. It made, now I can sort of release 2 if I feel like it. I can get ahead of my content and have 2 videos, so that I can go and take off for a week and go on vacation. I can free up some space to work on these paid products that I've got. If I want to do a course, I can do that. So I would say the biggest thing is it's just another resource in your business that you can kind of coordinate and be able to give you the time and the space. And you're right, you kind of also hit it right there too, is it's like gives you the space to zoom out. Like, I can do this call right now. Like, we can do this podcast because I'm not sitting there editing, or I'm not in front of a camera doing my own thing. And that's valuable to me, right? Like, I learned something, we learned something, like it's just important to do. So I started to prioritize different types of work, which I think was good. I still edit my own ads, and I edit some of my TikToks, because I still do like diving into editing now and again, because it is kind of fun. But no, it definitely took my business to the next level, as cliche as that is. But it does give me flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with scaling up, I think most people find that. Like, as long as you kind of are able to afford it with the way the business is doing, which clearly you are, I rarely find that hiring your first couple employees is a bad move. It always seems like it just makes things easier, more streamlined, and even you end up making more money in the long run, because, you are able to zoom out. So I'm curious about your manager. YouTube managers, like, I guess you weren't on YouTube during the whole MCN debacles. Are you familiar with like
I know of it,
networks?
and I have been approached by many MCNs, but there's enough wonderful YouTubers.
They're still out there. Okay.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are, and they're still trying. And I was a little bit, well, yeah, we can talk about that. You can finish your question, but yes, I am aware of MCNs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, good to know. So, is your manager just like one guy? I'm guessing it's not an MCN. It sounds like it is just a person, or maybe a small company that clearly you trust, and they're not just taking a percentage of your revenue in exchange for nothing. Tell us what your manager does exactly.
Yeah. So my manager, so I'll say how I kind of found him, but basically, yes, I had heard the horror stories of MCNs from other wonderful YouTubers that had shared their experience. And I had talked to people personally, and the good advice is just like, no one gets your AdSense, right? Unless you are working for a company and you're essentially kind of an employee who is the face of the YouTube channel. But I know somebody who the company owns the channel, and he's an employee, and so he's the face of it, but the company owns it. Linus, I think, from Linus Tech Tips, right? Like, Linus famously worked for a local Vancouver company where I'm from called NCIX, and then had this whole big thing where he basically kind of had to take the channel and do his own thing, which obviously worked out very well for Linus. But and NCIX is out of business, so obviously it didn't work out as well for them. But I would say that, no one gets your AdSense. I think you worked hard for that. That's yours. There's these new things now about like, we'll buy all your back catalog. So like, I can't really speak to that because I haven't really looked into it. But basically, yes, all my AdSense goes into my bank account, and he doesn't touch it. And that was a requirement for me right from the get-go. So he basically brings me brand deals and coordinates it and takes a commission from it. So basically, how it all started, like I said, I've got that, like, picture this, it's like January 2021 or whatever. I've got that big blow up video, and everybody's emailing me, and all these brands are emailing me. And I did have a brand that reached out to me that I was like, oh, I could actually, I think they were selling like art prints or something. And I was like, oh, okay, this is the first one that I thought could like sort of be interesting to maybe work with. And I tried to negotiate that deal on my own. It was time consuming. It was annoying. And it's really hard to put value. It's really hard to separate your value as a person, because remember, these agents and managers and brands, they're talking about you like you're not a real human being, and that you're not attaching your own kind of emotional state to the value of these deals or your views, which is so easy to do on YouTube. And so it was really difficult because they'd be like, yeah, you're not really worth that. And I was like, oh, that's harsh. So I didn't really know. And honestly, the numbers I was quoting felt outrageous at the time. And I now look back on it and I was like, I don't think I was that full of crap. Like, I think they were more off the mark than I was, to be quite honest. And so I was kind of dealing with the deal for a good like few weeks. And I don't know, I didn't really feel it. And I had managers and agents saying like, hey, we'd love to work with you. And for some reason, I think this guy, so I think what my manager did, which was smart, was he referenced like D'Angelo Wallace, who's like I don't know if you know who he is. He's a large commentary YouTuber. And he says that he had like managed him and some other names that he had managed on YouTube. And I was like, oh, okay. That gives me a little bit of faith. But then, of course, I asked the question, are you an MCN? Do you get a percentage of my AdSense? How does this work exactly? If I don't like you, can I fire you? Like all the right questions that I think you should ask, because I was very skeptical. And this was around April. So I had definitely had a bunch of people that were interested. And so then he came to me and said, like, I'm not an MCN. You get to keep your AdSense. If you don't like me, fire me. The only thing, I just take a commission off of brand deals that I bring you. So if I don't bring you anything, I don't get anything. All I ask is that, on your About Us page or in your social media profiles, if you could change your email address to be one that an email, like an inbox that you and I both have access to. So you can see all the communication that I have with brands. It's all in that inbox for you. So it's transparent. So when Dyson emails, I'll email back, but you'll be CC'd. So we both have access to this shared inbox. And he's like, and then that's it. And if you don't like it, then just, we'll give it a couple months, see what happens. If you don't like it, whatever. And I actually said no because I was so skeptical that I was like, oh, sounds good, but I'm still out because I was so burned by this, like, I don't know, I thought I could do it myself. I thought I could negotiate it myself. And I was like, yeah, no. I told him what that other brand that I mentioned was paying me. And he was like, you should be paid double than that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then I kind of gave it a few weeks and thought I was going to do it on my own. I was like, I'm a business guy. I can figure this out. And then I didn't do anything. And so he followed up like a month later and said, hey, how's it going? I have these brands that want to maybe work with you. And I realized I had done nothing. So I thought, you know what? I truly have nothing to lose. So I dove in. And my first brand deal was with Vessi, which does like waterproof sneakers. And they're based here in Vancouver. So I was like, oh, it's a local company. I kind of know people that sort of know them. And he was right. The rate was double what the other brand was like. I had negotiated hard with the other brand and he was able to get double. Like, it's crazy how managers, it's frustrating to be honest with you, how managers can get so much more, either because they just know or because these brands and these other agents, they know that creators are just, we don't know things and they take advantage of us. And so they push way harder, I think, to creators to get the price down than they do managers, which is frustrating. But it's just kind of the way that it sort of feels like it goes. So then he's been with me ever since. He's been great. He is, he's not independent. He was independent originally. And then now he's kind of part of a little bit of an agency, but I don't really deal with anybody else at the agency. I just always deal with him and his assistant, and they sort of, it's great. We have a Slack channel and they say, hey, do you want to work with this brand? I go, no. And then they go, okay. And then, they take their commission, which is super worth it, by the way, because then I don't have to do any of the emails and I don't have to negotiate. I just kind of do what I do, which is make videos and make ads. And they coordinate all like the revision process. They push back on certain things because brands try a lot of things that are stupid. And then they push back all the time for me, which is great and makes my life easier. And honestly, it's kind of awesome.
Mm-hmm. Did you say they take 20%?
Yes. Yeah. Did I say 20%? I don't know if I did, but yes.
Or that seems to be the standard rate. We also had a manager with Tree Skull. They took 20%. Totally worth it. Some brands would just kind of come straight to us and be like, hey, we'll pay you this much. It would be like, okay. But most of our brand deals were through a manager like yours, and it was exactly the same thing. They would take 20%. They would come to us with a deal. They would usually be able to get us more money than negotiating on our own. Like I said, occasionally brands do kind of reach out and they're just like, have money. And you're like, okay.
Right.
But it's, I think, easier to have somebody who's negotiating on your behalf. And it is crazy how time consuming it is, huh? Like this negotiation process. And it's weird. It's just sending emails, but there's something, I think you touched on this too. The kind of emotional aspect adds to it. I think, like, like, what am I worth? Am I asking for too? There's like this kind of inner turmoil associated with it, and if you can just have somebody who's just dealing with it and is more objective, I do feel it's worth it.
It's like I try to explain to because my friends don't always get it, right? Because most of my friends, I don't know if yours are too, but like in real life are like not YouTubers, and so they don't always super get it. And I was like, you know how you had negotiated your salary, and do you remember how frustrating that process was to like go through the job process when you got your job like 3 years ago? Imagine doing that like 6, 7, 8 times a month. Because that's sometimes how it feels, right? Between the brands, the deals that fall through and don't, and whatever, like you're selling yourself and trying to negotiate with a brand, and playing hardball and like going high so that, you kind of meet somewhere in the middle, and you're playing that stupid game. Like some people love it. Like if you work in sales or whatever, like full time, you're probably like, no, I live for that. But if you're just like a person who negotiated their job salary 3 years ago and like doesn't want to ever do it again, and remembers how frustrating that was, that's what we do all the time. Like we have to, these brand deals, you're negotiating them pretty much constantly. And now my Instagram and TikTok is growing, and now I'm getting more brand deals over there, which is a whole nother thing. And it's not even always just about number too. It's like, I'm realizing that so much of this is like, are you going to use Nick's likeness in a video? What is the exclusivity? Like, is Nick able to post a competitor? How long is that? 24 hours, 7 days, 6 months, forever? Is it a question of, usage, or we have the right to run ads against this video or this TikTok that Nick created, and we can do that for 6 months or whatever. All that stuff is negotiable. And I don't even know where to start. Like I'm kind of pretty familiar now with what I'm worth on like a 60-second YouTube integration, because I've done that now for, a year and a half, and I've done many, many deals. So I'm really confident there. So if a brand comes to me and says, we want to pay you X, I'm like, no, that's like not going to happen. But Instagram, TikTok, usage rights, blah, blah, who knows, like TV. I mean, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And all that stuff, a manager knows, and he negotiates things. Like deals come in and I'm like, we'll take it. And he's like, nope, we're going to talk about, there's some, issues around usage here that are way too aggressive, and we're not going to do that. And that is really valuable advice. If you find somebody that you trust, I mean, it's good. It's a good rule for working with anybody in life. But if you find somebody that you really like and you really trust, then hang on to them. So yeah, it's 20%. I've heard some people say 15. But I've also heard people say that agents or managers that are doing 15 are just trying to get clients because they don't really have any, and it's not actually all that sustainable from their perspective. I don't know if that's true. But it feels like 20% is standard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. 15, maybe they're just getting started, and you're kind of getting a deal. So it could be worth it depending on how much you're making. You're closing pretty big brand deals, it seems like. So giving up an extra 5% probably isn't exactly putting you in a rough financial position.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel good about when you find somebody that's really. Again, if you find somebody that you like and trust and they know what they're doing, when someone comes and says, I can do it for cheaper, I'm always skeptical, because I'm like, yeah, but I don't know you. And I know this is working. So why take a chance on somebody that might be a little bit cheaper, but could also be awful, and that could cost me in the long run. So I don't mind paying a premium, if it even is. I don't know. I feel like 20% is pretty standard and fair, to be honest. But, if you pay a premium, but you pay for somebody who's like really good and delivers, then hang on to them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally agree. And I do feel like the space you're in. So we talked about this with your ads and CPM paying well. But the brands that you work with, you mentioned Dyson and Vessi. Like these are huge companies, and they have deep pockets. Like depending on the space that you're in. So again, me in the gaming space, there were some brands that they're like this startup with maybe a quirky idea, and I'm like, I feel bad taking this much money from you.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have enough money, but we were kind of willing to do it. It seems like with you're mostly working with very established brands, which I'm sure makes negotiating more simple for your manager as well. They can afford it.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like companies with deep pockets, at least for me, I feel good having lots of money from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Dyson can afford it. Intel can afford it. Wayfair can afford it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, sorry, go on.
No, you go on.
No, I was going to say, and I think I also, what's a nice balance is I also shout out small Etsy creator, Etsy shops, and whatever. Any chance that I can get to talk about brands. I don't even have affiliate link relationships with them. The number one priority is always what is in the best interest of the audience, right? So if I've got a really great table that I found that I have no affiliate link commission on or anything because they're a small brand or whatever, or I would rather, if that's the table that I think my audience needs to know about, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not going to talk about one on Wayfair that I don't like as much just because. So sometimes I think people think it's a lot more calculated than it is. I'm pumping out like 5 TikToks a week, Instagram Reels, doing my stories. I've got 1, maybe 2 videos a week. You don't always have time to like make sure that everything is perfect. So I do like to shout out small brands as well that pay me nothing. But you're right. The Intels and Dysons and the LGs of the world can absolutely pay, and it works quite well. I'll also add that, like, I think in the negotiation stuff, I think a lot of people think that, because you mentioned they're usually easier to work with, maybe. I think sometimes, at least my experience, rate is not always the sticking point that really stops or makes a brand deal happen. Because rate, I think people think it would, right? Like, I want this much money, and they're like, we're going to pay you half that. And it's like, okay, well, then we're done. That's usually not always what derails the brand deals, in my experience, or makes them go sour. It's like, because that gets out of the way pretty quickly. Like, it's pretty obvious if you're going to come anywhere close to what my rate is to be on my channel. Like, it's going to be fairly obvious fairly quickly. Like, if you're coming in at a 10th of what I get paid, we're probably not going to go there. Depending on the brand, of course. And like I said, it depends on kind of where they're at and who they are. But I would say that, especially those top tier brands, they're usually kind of get how much this stuff costs. So that's usually not what derails the deals. But what does is like things like timing. Like, when do you need this? Well, our budget, our Q3 budget ends, and we've got to get this video out in a week. And we're like, well, you know what? The next video is already sponsored, and I'm not going to kill myself to release a video in 48 hours, and my editors are going to hate me, all to get this video out the door for a sponsor. Like, sorry, I'd love to work with you, but let's work it in the next quarter when you have more budget. So a lot of it is kind of the timing of it all. And I do find the larger the brand, the more red tape and hoops and back and forth there can be in the actual like revision process. They're a lot more careful. They make you fill in more forms to be like, please submit this form for like, what's your creative direction for the coming. Oh yeah. Like, that's like, where do you, what are the 3 bullets of our brand that you're going to talk about in the ad? And I'm like, oh my God. And I've had ones that give me like a quiz at the end that are like, please tell us, like, a feedback questionnaire on how we can do better. So the bigger the brands, I find, they can be more complex. The deals, the logistics and the coordination can be more complex. So sometimes you have to think, is that worth it? Because, if it's a small brand and it's a small deal and they're really complex and difficult to work with, I just never work with that brand again. And I tell all the other creators not to work with them. But for the most part, if it's a big brand, you have to expect there's more bureaucracy and red tape and forms. And, they're just a little bit more, they want more specific shots of what they want to work, right? Well, if you're dealing with a company like Skillshare, who is very comfortable doing ads with creators, they're just so easy to work with in my experience. Right. They're just like, here's a 60-second ad. Just go and say why you like. All you have to do is, take a course on Skillshare and tell us why you like it. Boom, done. Like, here's some screenshots of screen recordings of the website. Like, they're actually quite easy to work with. But those really big sort of blue chip brands are sort of actually more work than you think. And it's not money that becomes that much of a consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess for me, the biggest brands we worked with were usually along the lines of Skillshare or like Blue Apron kind of companies like
HelloFresh.
Yeah, exactly. They're established, but they're not like Intel necessarily.
Right.
And even for I found a lot of these brands were pretty chill. Like, we could just do whatever we wanted.
Totally.
But I could see why brands like Dyson or they would be more picky. Or did you say Lululemon was one of your?
No, I use them as an example of a brand that would be like on my, like, if you were watching my channel, Lululemon would probably want to use AdSense to target a creator like me, right? That's more my way. No, I've never worked with them.
Mm-hmm, sure. So kind of we're getting towards the end here, but I did want to talk to you about your Instagram and TikTok. I know you have YouTube Shorts as well, so you have short form content. It seems like you're doing cross posting as well. Can you tell us about like how you grew them?
Yeah. Short form is a whole other thing, and every creator is thinking about it and talking about it. So I started doing YouTube Shorts. I started doing all three, and I was like, at first I was really nervous about it because I was like, I don't know, it felt like Instagram stories, and I like Instagram stories, but it felt very like me with my phone and my speaking in that tiny little stupid headphone headset that people have, right? That's the microphone they use. They're always talking into their headsets. I'm like, this just doesn't feel like me. And I don't really know. And again, I was like typical millennial that's like, oh, is TikTok just dancing? Like, this feels stupid. And then the more I got used to it, the more I was like, wait, this is just video. It's just a short video. And I know video. Like, I know how to do that. We're YouTubers. We know what to do. So it's like, what if a YouTube video that is normally 18 minutes, how would I make it 45 seconds? And that became sort of where I started. Like, how could I explain an interior design style in 3 bullets and get a taste of, obviously, you know, you can't do much in 45 seconds compared to 18 minutes, but you can still do a lot. And so then I used my Sony camera. I used my Rode microphone. I edited in Final Cut Pro. Like, I basically just made a YouTube video, but smaller, snappier, and scripted. So I actually have a teleprompter, and that's how I started creating. That's how I create my short form. And I started to do that. YouTube Shorts is an interesting animal. I don't really know where it's going. I mean, I think it's very interesting how they've adjusted their monetization come the new year. That's very exciting I think it's going to put pressure on Instagram and TikTok to maybe change, because they don't pay their creators, like, basically they pay them peanuts. So that'll be really interesting to see how that changes the game, right? I found I was frustrating my audience though on Shorts quite a bit. I found they were a little bit like, I was excited to see you, but then I was like, ugh, this is a short video. I hate Shorts. I don't know if that's changing. I don't know if the audience is maybe adjusting to Shorts a little bit more in time, but I started to do a few Shorts, and then I kind of got tired of it and just stuck to long form. But on TikTok, it took off quite quickly. And I was gaining like 10,000 followers a week on TikTok. And now it's slowed down a little bit, but I think I'm at like 150,000 followers over on TikTok, which is great. And I've got some, like, the reach that you can get on TikTok is just insane. So yeah, TikTok has been basically doing those really tight YouTube videos. So sticking to 40 seconds, every word counts, every image counts. You can't sit there and go like, oh guys, I was about to sit here and film this TikTok and then my camera broke. Like, boom, YouTubers do that all the time, but like, and we probably shouldn't, but people just scroll. Like, they don't care about that. They don't have time for your what I ate for breakfast story that you might start your TikTok with. So it's very fast paced, and I kind of like that. Instagram Reels was slower, and I was noticing that I was like, this is stupid. I have like 35,000 followers on Instagram, but my TikToks are getting 100,000 views, and my Instagram Reels are getting like 10,000, which is weird because I have no followers on TikTok and 35,000 on Instagram. So that was weird for me. I kind of stopped doing Instagram Reels for a while and just stuck with TikTok. So I don't know if Instagram's changing too, because then I started posting my TikToks, cross-promoting them on Instagram, and then my Instagram blew up because of Reels, and I gained 100,000 Instagram followers in a week. Or a week. It was crazy. So now I have like 150,000 followers over there too. So that's how I kind of grew it, was Reels. And again, like, I think in terms of how I did it, the only thing I could really think of is don't necessarily, I think that the prevailing sort of wisdom that everybody still has on TikTok is post 5 times a day. It doesn't matter how good of a quality it is. Just, it's a numbers game. Get out there with your phone, talk into the little tiny microphone, and just whatever, go for it. And I didn't do that. I did not listen to that advice. I did 4 TikToks a week, not 4 a day. And I focused on quality over quantity. And that, I'm banking on the fact that TikTok's probably going to go that direction over time, that it's going to be more of a quality based kind of platform than just throwing out whatever, crap kind of comes to you that day and just talking to your phone. But I could be wrong. I think people like the sort of loose, kind of unedited feel of TikTok, but they seem to kind of like what I'm kind of doing too. So I don't really know. I think focusing on that quality and delivering value in a short amount of time is the key to how both the Instagram Reels and TikToks took off.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And did you notice with posting short form content to YouTube that your channel overall was getting more attention? Because I have heard and seen evidence for channels that they start posting shorts and all of a sudden their long form content also gets more views. But then there's also channels where they have these shorts with millions of views and nobody cares about their long form content. So it's kind of controversial.
Yeah. So I would put me more in the latter. And I think the thing too is that will take time is that and TikTok, I think people think that your average TikTok person is, 17. And that may be true. And I do remember I'm on TikTok talking about like top 5 marbles that you can consider for your kitchen. And people are like, dude, I'm 17 and I do not know. I don't care about marble in my kitchen. And I'm like, cool, keep scrolling because 150,000 other people do. And so TikTok's kind of mean like that. But anyway, I think, that's kind of what you see on TikTok, but I've been able to cultivate maybe that audience or that the people using TikTok is changing. It's going to naturally move beyond that 17-year-old and get lots of different other people on the platform. But you have to remember on Shorts, though, I do still think that there is a sense that people in their 30s are a little and up are by and large, sticking to Instagram and YouTube and platforms that they've been more familiar with for a very long time, which that's not new, right? I'm an older millennial and we were all on Instagram while our parents were still on Facebook, right? Like that's not new. It makes sense that every generation seems to want their next new thing. But to answer your question about Shorts, I didn't find that my channel got a whole lot more attention with Shorts. I found actually that a lot of my audience, which again, remember, is in their 30s and 40s, was a little bit frustrated with short form content. It's like, I want to see the images for longer. This feels like it's moving way too quickly. And, I hate shorts. And I wish you would just go back to making long form. So, maybe that's part of what you're seeing that difference is who is the audience. If your audience is 20-year-old gamers, then they might be a lot more quick to embrace YouTube Shorts than my audience, which is a 40-year-old woman that lives in the suburbs. She might not be as into it. I know a lot of my friends are like, if you go through a lot of social circles of people in their 30s and 40s, they're not on TikTok. You might have like one person who's like, yeah, I downloaded it and I hated it and it was super frustrating. And they're just like sticking to Instagram. And that's totally makes sense. That will probably change in time. So yeah, I found my audience was a bit frustrated with YouTube Shorts. But having said that, I think YouTube Shorts has probably maybe grown a lot since I was doing it. I can't remember when I posted my last short, but it might be 5 months ago. I've just stuck to long form over there. My partner manager doesn't like that. She wants me to post more shorts, but here we are.
Yeah, you ultimately got to do what's right for you. So one question I always like to kind of wrap up with is, if you could give one piece of advice for growing a YouTube channel, what would it be? Kind of generic, but I always like to ask it.
Okay. I would say, when you get like the biggest, like one piece of advice, it would be empathize with like your audience's problems. Like empathy, I think, is one of the most undervalued traits in our society right now, right? It's like empathizing and really genuinely caring about what other people's problems are and having a bit of compassion for other people. And so I really do believe that that is the key to growing on any social platform is your audience has a need. And, whether it's to be inspired by you, to learn from you, whatever, or entertained by you or whatever, they're bored and they have a problem. They want to renovate their kitchen. They want to make their house look beautiful, whatever the case might be. You are empathizing with their problems and all you're doing is creating solutions for those problems. And that's what I focus on. Where is the value in this video? Is it to make people entertained and have a laugh on a Saturday morning? Is it because their house is ugly and they hate it and they need to learn how to make it more cohesive? Or they need to choose a white paint color and they're just tearing their hair out because they're staring at a wall of paint samples at Benjamin Moore and they're just like, I just need to know what white to do. And then all of a sudden they come to my channel and I'm like, relax, we're going to get through this. Like we're going to pick a white paint together. So that's my biggest advice is just stop focusing on you and your problem. Because your problem is I need more views. Your problem is I need more money. And your problem is I need more subscribers. But that's not their problem, right? Their problem is different. And so you need to lead with empathy and compassion for their problems and provide great, meaningful solutions that are going to provide actual value to them. And I think if you focus your attention every single video on how you can deliver that value in the least amount of time, so you're not wasting their time, you're delivering on what you say you're going to deliver in the title and the thumbnail, and it's interesting, they'll reward you by watching you, by clicking on your links and holding their attention. And once you hold their attention, which I have shown to do, I mean, you've seen some of the numbers, once you hold that attention, they learn to trust you and they stick with you, and you can monetize that in a bunch of different ways. I mean, we've talked about that today, but like I've proven that you can. You just need to provide that value continuously.
Mm-hmm. Wow, beautiful answer. I love it. Empathy. I do feel like it's undervalued, and just connecting with your audience is crucially important, especially in the long game. Like, you can kind of game the system, get some views, but I feel like, you know, if you're not authentic and actually caring about the people that are watching, it's going to be harder for you to succeed, and maybe it's going to make you more of a dick anyway.
Yeah.
So it's
it's like, think of a channel like you do a startup, right? So like read some of the startup books that you know, are out there, like Lean Canvas and Traction, and like all the ones that teach you about. That is what every startup tries to do. Who is our customer? What is their biggest problem? And how does this business solve it? And that's exactly what you're doing with the channel. But it's not until you actually empathize with your audience that you're going to actually create something of value for them. Because I think a lot of creators that are frustrated in the like 100 subscribers, 200 subscribers, a lot of the ones that I've noticed that break out are the ones that are solving problems, not the ones that think the biggest problem is I don't have enough views, because that's only what you care about. And honestly, the world doesn't care about the fact that you don't have enough views. Sorry, but it's the truth, right? Like, no one cares that you don't have enough views. What they care about is the value they're going to get from watching your content. And that's your job, is to create that value.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to leave it at that. Beautifully said. Nick, this has been awesome.
Thank
Thanks
you
again for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And with that, thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you in the next one.